For most of my life, I was convinced that my brain was broken. I seemed to have 1,000 ideas all at once, but actually finishing one seemed impossible. When I found out that I had ADHD, everything I read seemed to frame it as a disorder, a bug to be fixed. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the same wiring that makes it a nightmare to remember to pay bills on time is also the source of an incredible creative advantage? And this isn't just wishful thinking. New science is revealing that a key ADHD trait that we've been taught to hate by society isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Today, we're breaking down that science to see how understanding it can change everything for you too. The first thing people think about with ADHD is scatterbrained. We jump from idea to idea, and to people on the outside, it can seem like chaos. The world tells us to focus and think in a straight line, but science confirms that this isn't a defect. It's called divergent thinking. A neurotypical brain might look at a box of Legos and think, oh, I can pile those up and make a wall out of it. An ADHD brain, on the other hand, will just dump the whole box of Legos onto the floor, and we can immediately see, oh, okay, well, I can build a castle, or I could build a Victorian house, or a dragon. Divergent thinking is the ability to take one starting point and spin it into countless original ideas. Studies show that people with ADHD often excel at this. It's the foundation of creativity. Our brains are less like a straight road and more like a fireworks, exploding into a million sparks of light. For years, I saw this as a curse. My brain would fire off so many ideas, but because I couldn't organize those ideas neatly, I figured it was just mental noise. Learning about divergent thinking was a revelation for me. It opened up walls of creativity in my brain. I started writing again, started 2 YouTube channels. And if you had told me I would be doing this 5 years ago, I would have thought you were out of your mind. The problem wasn't my brain, but it was my belief that I had to process ideas just like everyone else in a straight, linear fashion. But once I stopped trying to force my brain into that tiny little box, I started capturing every idea I had without judgment. The second big flaw of ADHD is distractibility. A car alarm, a weird cloud, and we're off to the races. This is seen as our biggest weakness, but I would suggest reframing it as a trait that leads to something called conceptual expansion. Think of a typical mental filter as a club bouncer. The ADHD brain's filter is more like the host at a block party. We're welcoming everybody there, not keeping anyone out. And this leaky filter means that we're constantly collecting a rich tapestry of seemingly random data. This process fuels conceptual expansion. A researcher called Holly Knight recently found that college students with ADHD often perform better on creative tasks because they were less constrained on what they already knew. I lived this without knowing its name. At work one time, I was stuck on a complex data visualization project. It seemed like for hours. I got really frustrated, so I went for a walk in the neighborhood around the college that I worked at. I got distracted by this one very large oak tree with roots that were growing up and upsetting the pavement on the sidewalk. It looked chaotic, but it was an organized network of roots. And I started thinking about how those roots distributed the resources for the tree to keep on living. And then it all hit me. I went back to work and designed a visualization of the data based on that tree roots pattern that I had noticed. It was unconventional, but it showed the data's complexity in a way that we hadn't thought of before. So my so-called distraction problem wasn't a detour. It was a path to a solution that worked. It might sound like a contradiction, but for every story about our inability to focus, there's the flip side, hyperfocus. It's that intense, in the zone concentration where the rest of the world just melts away. Scientists believe that hyperfocus links back to our dopamine system. ADHD brain is always seeking a dopamine rush. A boring task is like trying to fire up a rocket with no fuel. It just sputters. But an interesting or challenging task to an ADHD person provides that dopamine, and then it's like the engines revving up to blast off. Our brain locks on the idea, and the rest of the world melts away. For most of my life, I tried and tried this, and I failed. I failed miserably trying to stick to a 9-to-5 schedule, forcing myself to do boring tasks. Then I'd spend most of the night obsessively working on a passion project for free, and I'd feel guilty. The turning point was working with my brain's reward system. I realized that my best work isn't about time, it's about energy and interest. Now I try to structure my life around that. I identify the projects that genuinely interest me, and I guard that time fiercely. For boring tasks, I use timers or short sprints. I gave myself permission to lean into my hyperfocus instead of treating it like a glitch. The result is better work and more productivity. So, how do we turn this knowledge into practice? First, become an idea catcher. Your brain is like a popcorn machine. Don't try to control it, just catch those ideas. Carry around a notebook or use the voice app on your phone. The goal is to capture your brain's natural output without judgment. Review your list once a week, and you'll probably be stunned by the gems you find. Second, curate your inspiration. Use your distractibility as a data gathering tool. If you're stuck, change your scenery. Go to a museum, go walk around the block, go to a coffee shop and sit and watch people. Let your leaky brain filter do its job, and just trust your brain to make those connections later. Third, design your life around motivation, not the clock. Your energy is tied to your interest. That's your superpower. Structure your day around your rocket fuel tasks when you have the most energy. For me, that's earlier in the morning. If you can, advocate for projects that you feel passionate about. Leaning into your hyperfocus is the way to go. For too long, the story around ADHD has been disorder and deficit. But the science is showing that our brains aren't broken, they're different. That storm of ideas you have is called divergent thinking. That distractibility fuels conceptual expansion. That all or nothing focus is your hyperfocus engine. It's just waiting for a mission it cares about. Remember that these are features, not bugs. Embracing this knowledge was the most empowering shift in my life. It let me stop fighting my brain, and I learned to work with my brain. Now, I want to hear from you. When has an ADHD trait that you considered a flaw led to a creative breakthrough? Share your story in the comments. Let's build a new narrative together, one that celebrates the incredible creative gifts of our ADHD brains. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing or click the bell and leave a like. It really helps my channel. I will see you in the next one.